Y'all know what's going on. It's time for another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Bacon. Welcome to the show, y'all. Years inside grind a man down, and they turn hope to ash and anger to a dull, constant ache. Elijah learned to wear the mask of indifference, to move through the violent, chaotic world of the prison like a ghost. But underneath, the fire of his betrayal still burned. He watched men come and go. He saw the brutal politics of the yard, the endless cycle of debt and retribution. He saw the way the system was designed not to rehabilitate, but to break. And he refused to be broken. He found his purpose in the prison library. He became a tutor, helping other inmates learn to read, to write, to think. He saw the spark of potential in men the world had thrown away, and he fanned it into a flame. In teaching them, he was also teaching himself. He was learning that his life was more than just his father's sin. On the outside, his father's world continued its slow collapse. The lie was too big to maintain. The church started to crumble under the weight of his hypocrisy. Donations dwindled, the congregation shrank, the whispers grew louder, and the cops were still watching. They knew they hadn't gotten the whole story. They knew a kid like Elijah wasn't a kingpin. They started digging again, pulling at the loose threads of the Reverend's life. The break came from an unexpected place. Silas's operation got too big, too reckless. A deal went bad, a shootout, and one of Silas's own men, facing a life sentence, decided to talk. He told them everything about the money laundering, about the church vans, about the preacher who had sold his soul for a piece of the pie. The arrest of Reverend Michael was an even bigger story than his son's. The man of God, a drug trafficker, a money launderer, and it was a fall from grace of biblical proportions. The hypocrisy was so stunning, so absolute, it shook the whole city. When Elijah heard the news, he felt nothing. No satisfaction, no joy, just a profound, weary sadness. The truth was finally out. But it was too late. The damage was done. The years were lost. And his father was now just another number in the same broken system. They ended up in the same prison. Not by design, just by the cruel, indifferent logic of the system. Reverend Michael was a broken man. The fire and brimstone were gone, replaced by a hollow, haunted look. He was old, scared, and alone. The same flock he had once led now spit on his name. In prison, a preacher, especially a dirty one, is a target. The other inmates saw him as the ultimate hypocrite, a man who had preached salvation while paving his own road to hell. He was beaten, robbed, and humiliated. The same kind of torment Elijah had endured years before. The cycle had come full circle. Elijah watched from a distance. He saw his father, a shell of the man he once was, shuffling through the child line, his eyes downcast. And he felt a flicker of something he hadn't expected. Pity. He knew he had to face him. He arranged a meeting in the chapel, the same place his father had once delivered his thunderous sermons. They sat in a back pew, the air thick with the weight of years of unspoken words. His father couldn't even look at him. He just stared at the floor, his shoulders slumped in defeat. "I'm sorry, Elijah," he whispered, his voice a dry rasp. "I was a coward. I was weak. I sacrificed you to save myself, and I have lived in my own private hell every day since." Elijah listened. The anger he had carried for so long was still there, a cold, hard knot in his chest, but it was mixed with something else now, a weary understanding. He saw his father not as a monster, but as a flawed, broken man, a man who had been consumed by his own fear and greed. "I know," Elijah said, his voice quiet. "I've been living in it with you." They sat in silence for a long time. There were no easy answers, no Hollywood ending where they hugged and all was forgiven. The wound was too deep for that. But in that shared silence, in that quiet acknowledgement of their shared damnation, something shifted. It wasn't forgiveness. It was just acceptance. The beginning of a long, slow, painful process of trying to find a way back, not to what they were, but to something new. Two broken men, a father and a son, starting over at the bottom. The years that followed were a slow, difficult journey. Elijah and his father started to talk, not just in the chapel, but in the yard, in the child line. They talked about the past, about the choices that had led them here. It was a painful excavation digging through layers of lies and regret. But for the first time, it was honest. Elijah helped his father navigate the brutal world of the prison. He protected him from the worst of the predators. He taught him the rules of survival. In a strange, twisted way, the son had become the father. And his father, in his brokenness, finally gave Elijah the one thing he had always needed: the truth. He admitted his weakness, his fear, his hypocrisy. And in that admission, Elijah found a strange kind of peace. The myth of the perfect father was dead. But in his place was a real, flawed man, a man he could finally begin to understand. Elijah was released on parole after 12 years. He walked out of those gates a man, not a boy. His mother was there, older, but with a light in her eyes he hadn't seen in years. His father was still inside with another decade to serve, but they had a bond now, forged in the fires of their shared hell. Elijah didn't go back to the old neighborhood. He went to college, got a degree in theology, and he didn't want to be a preacher like his father. He wanted to be a counselor, a man who could help other lost souls find their way. He started a ministry, not in a church, but in the streets. He worked with kids who were caught in the same cycle he had been, kids from broken homes looking for a family in all the wrong places. And he told them his story, the story of the Reverend's Lie. He told them that faith without works is dead, and that the most dangerous devil is the one that wears a righteous mask. He visited his father every month. And in those quiet conversations through the plexiglass, they both found a measure of redemption. They couldn't change the past. They couldn't get back the years they had lost, but they could build something new in the ruins. A legacy, not of hypocrisy and betrayal, but of honesty, of forgiveness, and of the hard, painful, beautiful work of finding God in the most broken of places. This has been another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Baker, and I say peace, y'all.